Hello. There we go. Thank you. Before everybody gets too settled, the message about your name tags may not have come through as clearly as we would have liked. So your name tags have a number on them, and your tables have a number on them. So if you would match your name tag to your table, that would be awesome. That's very important for this next third of the day. So just take a moment, go ahead and do that now. I don't mind about the noise. Is everybody where they're supposed to be? That's awesome. Okay, quick learners, that happened. I'm gonna do it again. We've got our Wi-Fi up here. We have our Twitter handle up here. Twitter, hashtag GL Reading, hashtag Everyday Counts Manatee. How many people have tweeted since the last time? Oh, hands going up. Anybody else? More tweeters? It's happening. Okay, great. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a quick picture of you all so that we can get that out for the afternoon. Everybody smile. I won't know if you didn't, but I assume that you did. Okay, so my job now is to just introduce the partners in the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and then Dennis, who is the Vice Chancellor of USF Sarasota Manatee, will frame the partnership for us and then take us through to this next, this middle part of the day and introduce somebody else. I didn't want to give that away. So we have, if we could, stand when I call your name, Marilyn Howard from the Manatee Community Foundation, Dennis Stover from USF Sarasota Manatee, he's right here, Dr. Diana Green from Manatee County Public Schools, and Philip Brown from the United Way of Manatee County. He's hiding in the corner. And then we're also privileged to have today our partner with the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and that's Deborah Jacobs with the Patterson Foundation. And she has some other folks at her table, Roxanne Jaffe and Linda Gould, and then somebody else who I'm not going to introduce because Dennis will. So, thank you all very much. Dennis? I'm sorry, I completely forgot to mention that we have Dr. Sheila Halpin. Where are you? She's not going to want me to do this, but there she is, and Pirette Kelly. Dr. Halpin is with the school district working on the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and Pirette Kelly in the back is a volunteer working on the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bonan. My high sign in the back, if you can't hear me, will be Mr. MTV. How about a round of applause for Charles on everything he does for our community? Thank you, Charles. It's also time to acknowledge a few of our elected officials in the audience. Would our school board members please stand at this time and receive recognition? Mr. Kennedy was with us earlier this morning. He took the morning session and not the afternoon, so I think they're splitting up. Must be that sunshine rule or something, you know, doing that. We appreciate you being here today, and I'll tell you, I only have 20 minutes, right, Bronlyn? No. I'm going to start in a hamlet, far, far away. And no, I can't do that one? Okay. About a year and a half ago, a group of folks that were really interested in really seeing our community propel its grade level reading numbers for Manatee County got together. Those people were introduced just earlier. And some of them started even before that. The Patterson Foundation and our friends in Sarasota started a little before us. And so they have a grade level initiative going on in Sarasota as well. Since we've formed even a bigger collaborative through the Suncoast. And the Patterson Foundation has been very instrumental at steering us into this regional collaboration that only brings better attention and visibility for the issue that we're trying to address in grade level reading. The university got involved early on because it's about kids. If we don't have kids that can read, guess what? They're not going to come to USF-SM. They're not going to get admitted into USF-SM. So we have a vested interest on one side that we have kids that can read when they get to college, but the bigger picture is we have an entire college of education and we're preparing those educators for the future. We want them to be aware of what's going on in the sphere of education and what's cutting edge and how they can help address the needs as they arise. I started as an elementary school teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, and then I worked for the Department of Education in Indiana. Go Hoosiers. Got a couple Indiana folks at my table that I'm facilitating. How does that work? You know, we're everywhere. But one of my joys was working in a project called Project Primetime to reduce class size kindergarten through third grade. A lot of the same structures that we're working on in grade level reading is really getting the attention needed at the appropriate time so young people can succeed. So we're really excited that grade level reading in Manatee County started with a big group of folks sitting together, and then a larger group sitting together, and now we're a regional group that's partnering and playing together in the same sandbox. How wonderful it is for our young people that we're all here addressing that. 160 strong today in this room. Congratulations to you. Collectively, we make a big difference, but individually, we all have a passion for this, and I appreciate that. The comments that came out of the simulation this morning from the participants were heartwarming and just genuinely exciting to hear as a person that's helping kind of weave the network of folks together that are helping with this project. So we appreciate what you've done. I got to be a 40-year-old parent as a single parent, and that was kind of exciting to do in my simulation today. But it's all about the kids. And in Manatee County, we're focusing on attendance first. Later, you'll hear from the expert at the Annie Casey Foundation that will talk to us, Ron Fairchild. He's here today. But we focused on attendance first. Get my tongue working here today. So we're going to see an attendance video next. But before that, I want to introduce the next speaker so I don't have to jump out of my seat and come back up here, and we'll save time. Beth Duda is the senior or lead consultant for the Suncoast Grade-Level Reading Initiative, spearheaded by the Patterson Foundation. Beth will introduce Ron. And Beth, would you just stand and give a wave out? There you are. Oh, she's there. So she'll come up after the video. So we'll do a short video. The video is called Attendance Works, is that correct, Ronlin? Okay, and it illuminates some of the issues that we're going to be addressing in Manatee County as it relates to attention. This afternoon is focused on what you need at a local level in your schools to make a difference, and so we can be facilitators and you can help educate us about that. So use the time wisely this afternoon to really brainstorm and bring it down to your table level with some practical solutions that help. So attention to the screen, and thank you very much.
Nationwide, at least 1 out of 10 students misses nearly a month of school every year. In some cities, as many as 1 in 4 students are missing that much school. I'm Hetty Chang. I'm the founder and director of Attendance Works, a national initiative committed to addressing this alarming, largely overlooked crisis that's preventing too many children from having a chance to learn and succeed. When a student misses 10% or more of the school year, or about 18 or more days, we call that chronic absenteeism. That is a red alert that a student is headed for academic trouble and eventually for dropping out of high school. Too often, we think that absences aren't a problem as long as they're excused, or that a child's learning won't be affected unless he or she misses a lot of days all in a row. But research shows that missing 10% of the school year, which can be just 2 or 3 days every month, can add up to so much lost time in the classroom that children just can't keep up. And we don't realize that poor attendance isn't just a problem in high school. It can start as early as kindergarten or preschool. Many of these early absences aren't truancy or skipping school. They're excused absences occurring for a variety of reasons. Even so, they all add up to lost learning time. If chronic absence continues year after year, some students may have missed half a year of instruction by the time they reach 3rd grade. Emerging research shows that children chronically absent in both kindergarten and 1st grade are far less likely to read proficiently at the end of 3rd grade. If children don't show up for school regularly, they miss out on the chance to acquire fundamental reading and math skills and to build a habit of good attendance that will help them throughout their education and in the workplace. Children from low-income families are especially hard hit. Children living in poverty have fewer resources to make up for the lost learning opportunities and are more likely to experience chronic absence because of the economic and health challenges they face. And when too many children miss too much school, the constant churn affects the whole classroom. It's harder for teachers to teach and other students to learn. The good news is chronic absence is a problem we can solve. Families, schools, and communities working together can improve attendance. What can we do? Here are a few key strategies. Engage families. Many parents and students don't realize how quickly early absences can add up to academic trouble. Community members and teachers can partner with families to build a culture of attendance through early outreach, incentives, and attention to data. Fix transportation. The lack of a reliable car or simply missing the school bus can mean some students don't make it to class. Schools, transit agencies, and community partners can organize carpools, supply bus passes, or find other ways to get kids to school. Address health needs. Health concerns, particularly asthma and dental problems, or simply a lack of medical care, are among the leading reasons students miss school in the early grades. Schools and medical professionals can work together to connect children and families to healthcare and information. Track the right data. Schools too often overlook chronic absence because they only track average daily attendance or unexcused absences, not how many kids miss too many days for any reason. Check out the Attendance Works website for data tools you can download for free. This is just a beginning. There is a growing number of communities making a difference. In New York City, the mayor has launched an impressive interagency effort that involves partnerships with nonprofits, businesses, health, law enforcement, housing, and the media. A major accomplishment has been helping 9,000 students by assigning these students to success mentors. In Springfield, Massachusetts, parents and teachers are organizing walking school buses to make sure students have a safe path to school. In Los Angeles, the school district is using counselors to support schools with the highest levels of absenteeism in kindergarten and 9th grade. The district is also setting goals for attendance, so everyone knows what to expect. In Baltimore, local Philanthropy, the school district, and the mayor are working together to get everyone to do their part. They're holding school attendance contests, engaging young people in creative messaging, and involving faith-based groups in helping get kids to school. In a number of places, Portland, Oregon, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Oakland, California, community schools are reducing chronic absence. They're offering supports at schools, social services, health, mental health, and great after-school programs that help families and kids overcome the barriers that keep them from coming to school. So, now it's your turn. Is chronic absence a problem in your school or community? What will you do to help end chronic absence and ensure every child is in school so they can learn? Remember, when it comes to academic success, we can all help send the message that going to school every day is essential to a brighter future for our children. Join us this September as we launch Attendance Awareness Month throughout the country.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Judah, and I am the lead consultant for the... Oh, you can't hear me. Thank you, Laura. Now you can. Hi, I'm Beth Judah. I'm the lead consultant for the Patterson Foundation for the Suncoast Campaign for Grade-Level Reading, and it is my honor on behalf of the Suncoast Campaign for Grade-Level Reading to welcome our special guest this afternoon. As many of you know, the Campaign for Grade-Level Reading is a national initiative with currently over 200 communities dedicated to making a difference in reading proficiency by the end of the 3rd grade. And we are very fortunate to have a senior consultant with us today from the national campaign, Ron Fairchild. And I have a little bit of information about Ron for those of you who like to make connections. So I do want to tell you that he's an alum of Vanderbilt University. So any of you here with that connection? No? Okay. And also, he was the founding CEO of the National Summer Learning Association and executive director of the predecessor organization, the National Center for Summer Learning at Johns Hopkins University. Ron's role in the campaign, he is the lead on community solutions assurance of the campaign, responsible for managing the National Community Support Center, which delivers technical assistance in the areas of school readiness, attendance, and summer learning to more than 200 communities. If you read Tom Tryon's editorial this weekend in the Sarasota Herald Tribune, Tom called Ron one of the members of the tag team in grade-level reading. Ralph Smith, who many of you had an opportunity to see earlier this year, and Ron. He called Ralph Smith the chief orator, and he called Ron, I want to make sure I'm quoting this correctly, is here it is, Chief Executive and Implementer in Chief of the campaign. So I'd like to bring him up to the podium so he can share with you his thoughts on the campaign and also his thoughts specifically on the importance of attendance. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Beth, and good afternoon. Come on, we can do a little bit better than that. We're in a Baptist church, after all. Good afternoon. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the Campaign for Grade-Level Reading. Thank you for the honor to be with you this morning. Thank you for the commitment that your presence here represents. Thank you on behalf of the children in Manatee County for everything that you're going to do to fundamentally change the kind of opportunities that are available for low-income kids and families in this community. I also want to welcome you officially to our network of campaign communities across the country, which now includes more than 200 communities in 42 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So that is a proud accomplishment for all of us who've worked on this issue, to know that there are so many communities across this country who are putting a stake in the ground and making a commitment around grade-level reading. I also wanted to try to make a little bit of a connection locally here. I grew up not far from here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And for me, this work is incredibly personal and incredibly important. I like to joke that my mother taught me everything I know about summer programming, in particular because she was a babysitter in our neighborhood. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and she regularly babysat for about 10 kids over the course of the summer, and would always load us up in the station wagon and take us to great places like the Bishop Planetarium, to the public library in St. Petersburg, and really had that kind of connection about summer enrichment. And I like to say that that's one of the main reasons I went into education. It's one of the main reasons I continue to be such a firm believer in the power of literacy and the power of reading to be really transformative. The first slide that I wanted to share with you really describes the architecture, the framework of the campaign. And I think it's pretty significant in that so many communities have seen themselves in this and have been able to communicate the power of this campaign by really talking about how we start this effort is really based in large part on the simulation that you did this morning. So if you want to break cycles of poverty, if you want to expand opportunities and make a generational change for young people and their families, one of the best predictors, one of the best places to start is by looking intensely at grade-level reading in the 3rd grade. It turns out that 3rd grade reading proficiency is one of the best predictors we have for whether or not kids will continue on in education, will succeed in high school, make a successful transition to college and to career. One of the best predictors we have is 3rd grade reading. And we know right now in this country, only 1 in 5 kids, 1 in 5 low-income kids are reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. Only about 20% of our low-income kids hit that milestone. We also know that right now here, between Sarasota and Manatee together, that there continues to be a 40% of our kids not hitting this reading proficiency mark collectively. So I want to applaud Manatee County. I want to applaud the work that you're doing here. I also want to applaud the effort that is connected to this in terms of the broader work across the Suncoast to really make a difference on this issue. I heard that you're starting with attendance, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I also heard a lot about your graduation enhancement technicians. Do folks know about these folks? Graduation enhancement technicians? This is a pretty special thing. I am a former teacher, and the notion that we would have folks in our Title I schools, in our schools for the sole purpose, those positions for the sole purpose of identifying kids who need extra help and thinking about how we provide that extra support and extra opportunity beyond the traditional school day and year and what they might get in the classroom. That investment is huge and is significant. The investment that you've made already in summer programming is an incredible way that the district is stepping up with the community to really provide support. I wanted to share a little bit about what we're seeing across the country on these 3 community solutions areas of school readiness, school attendance, and summer. And the importance of where we started as a campaign, we started in communities. We said there are a host of things that kids are getting or aren't getting in the community that have huge decisive factors in whether or not they are successful in reaching this milestone of 3rd grade reading proficiency. So we know right now, even our best schools, with our best school leaders, our best teachers, struggle with 3 things. They struggle with kids who show up not fully ready to take advantage of what school has to offer, beginning in kindergarten. They struggle with kids who miss far too much school, who are chronically absent, and we know right now, collectively across Sarasota and Manatee, 2,800 kids are chronically absent right now, right here. And schools struggle with too many kids experiencing too much of a setback during the summer months. And those 3 things, when you start to think about the pipeline of opportunity for kids from birth to age 8, those 3 things, school readiness, school attendance, and summer learning, have a huge impact on whether or not kids are going to hit that reading proficiency mark. So I wanted to share a little bit about all 3, but with a special concentration on attendance when we get to that. So what I would like to do is go ahead and advance to the next slide. So the purple bars are kids above the poverty threshold. The yellowish orange bars are kids below the poverty threshold. And this is the connection between poverty and specific skills that kids have when they are entering kindergarten. Recognizing letters, counting to 20 or higher, writing their name, reading words in a book. We know that there is a link between the kind of opportunities that kids get, whether or not they get those opportunities before they even set foot in school, as to whether or not they're going to be prepared for kindergarten. The next slide, please. We also know that there's something called the 30 million word gap, that kids in low-income families and in low-income homes hear fewer words, 30 million fewer words by the time they start school the first day of kindergarten. We also know a lot of that has to do with a lack of a print-rich environment, lack of books in the home. We know on average for middle-income kids, one study suggested that middle-income kids in this particular neighborhood had access to 13 books. And I don't know about you, I have two boys, 14 and 15, and I know a lot of folks in this room, your kids and your grandkids, likely have substantially more than 13 books. In low-income homes and low-income households, we know that the average in that study was 1 book per every 300 children. So we have a significant opportunity to increase access to print, access to words, to information, to really enrich kids' experiences in school readiness. The next slide describes a little bit about what we're seeing across the country and what's actually working on the ground. It turns out that these 3 solutions areas, school readiness, school attendance, and summer, they are things that people can actually take action on and produce results. Because a lot of times we face problems and challenges in education and other parts of our society, and we feel like these problems are too difficult or too intractable for us to actually make a difference. And what we've seen across the country since we started this work back in 2010 is that communities that make a commitment and that really focus investment and resources in expanding these kinds of opportunities can and do produce results. They can actually improve school readiness rates. You can actually reduce chronic absenteeism, and you can actually improve summer learning opportunities for kids. And you can do that in a relatively short period of time and do it in a way that inspires more confidence and more commitment across entire communities. So we've seen on school readiness a huge commitment to early screening, early intervention. I don't know if you notice, I wear glasses. I also wear hearing aids. So I joke with my wife that 2 out of my 5 senses are really experiencing a setback right now. So I'm hoping to hang on to the other 3 really solidly. But many of our kids face health barriers and health challenges that are unidentified, they're undiagnosed, untreated, and when they show up to school on the first day of school, they don't have all the opportunities that they need prior to that to really be able to take advantage of what school has to offer. So we've seen communities make a commitment to comprehensive developmental screening, to solving issues like vision, making sure that kids get glasses and get screened for vision checks comprehensively across entire communities so that no child has an undiagnosed, untreated physical setback or barrier when they begin school. We've also seen an investment across the board in increasing home visitation, increasing parent outreach in education, working with parents, helping parents be successful in the role that they have in making sure that their kids are fully ready and fully prepared to take advantage of what school has to offer. The other thing that we see in this 0 to 5 space is the power that exists when you say as a community, we need to make sure that kids are reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade, by age 8. And all of the investments that we make in early learning from 0 to 5, let's orient those toward making sure that kids hit this critical milestone. And folks who've been working in early childhood for a long, long time have found that the campaign gives them an opportunity to talk about the impact of early childhood in a really powerful way in terms of the way to consolidate all of those investments in early learning is to really get to that 3rd grade reading milestone. So the next slide talks about attendance. So a big part of life is showing up, right? So thank you for showing up here. Thank you for showing up on behalf of kids. And look at the link. This is the link between attendance and achievement in reading. For the bottom line here is kindergarten absence rate. The y-axis is the average academic performance of fifth graders. And it turns out that there is an ironclad link, correlation between poor attendance in kindergarten and lower levels of achievement in fifth grade. Does that surprise anybody? I said duh when I heard that, right? Because if you don't show up, you can have the best schools, the best instruction, the best curriculum, but if kids aren't attending, all of that work, all of that investment, everything that we've put into that is lost, is really lost. So that's something that we can do a lot on. And you heard from Hedy Chang via that video how powerful those solutions can be on school attendance. In our next slide. So I want to give you a little bit of a scenario here. I know we're talking about reading, but I wanted to do a little math exercise. And this is a little bit of audience participation. So I want to encourage you to shout out answers here. So you've got a fictional school of 100 kids. I try to do easy math for myself primarily. Say you have a 90% average daily attendance rate. 90% is pretty good, right? What is 90% in most settings, or 95%? It's an A, right? So when you only measure average daily attendance, 90% sounds pretty good. Let's dig into that 90% a little bit. How many kids are absent on any given day? 10. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And the next. How many total absences, oh, we got the answer early. How many total absences would you have for the entire year? How many? 1,800. Now let's look at the next scenario. Next slide. So what if you found out that 20 of your kids missed 20 days of school and were collectively responsible for 400 of those days? What would your chronic absenteeism rate be? Twenty of your kids missed 10% or more, missed 20 days of school when you actually started looking into that data. 20 out of 100. What would your chronic absenteeism rate be? 20%. So it is possible to simultaneously have an A on average daily attendance. You could have 90% average daily attendance and have a tragically high chronic absenteeism rate. We go in schools and have worked with schools in this campaign that this exact scenario happens. And it's totally masked by the fact that we only report typically average daily attendance. So what we have to do, what we absolutely have to do, is unpack that data. We have to crunch those numbers, and we have to find out how many kids miss 10% or more of school. How many kids miss 18 or more days over the course of a 180-day school year? So if you miss, let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's keep it round numbers easy. Say you miss 20 days in kindergarten. Say you're a kid who misses 20 days in first grade, and you miss 20 days in second grade, and you miss 20 days in third grade. How many days have you missed in total over the course of those 4 years of school? 80 days. So is it any wonder that kids who are chronically absent face a huge challenge to reading proficiently by the end of third grade? And the fact of the matter is that when you actually start to look at that data and publicize that data, you can actually start to see movement on it and focus on it. And that's what's so exciting about your prioritizing attendance first by saying that every single day matters, unexcused, excused, whatever. Kids need to be in school. We need to build a culture of showing up, of attending, making sure that that's an expectation, that starting in that place means that you're likely to produce some pretty powerful results pretty quickly. That the act of knowing your numbers, following up on those numbers, having a person in your schools, your graduation enhancement technicians, having those people in the schools to be able to follow up with those families and to really work on those barriers can make a big difference. Next slide, please. So we tried to distill what we've been learning from communities around the country on this issue, and all three of the school readiness, school attendance, and summer. And what turns out to be the case on attendance especially is that we can accomplish a lot through messaging, through getting many communities on board, and many partners within communities on board around this issue. And the more people that are talking about it, the more people that are on point about this message of chronic absenteeism, the fact of the matter is we've seen community after community where schools that have crunched those numbers and said to their community partners, we have a 20% or 25% chronic absenteeism rate in kindergarten, first or second grade. What can we do as communities to support that? Because schools alone are not going to be able to solve the reading proficiency issue that we face. It's going to take community. Community as a whole, community represented by all of the partners in this room to really step up and solve these problems. And it turns out that schools that start with 20 or 25% chronic absenteeism can drive those numbers down. We've seen schools and we've seen entire districts reduce chronic absenteeism across the country through messaging, through efforts to put in success mentors like we heard about in those videos, to really do comprehensive wake-up calls, those robocalls that go out in the morning to make sure that kids are up and ready, and walking school buses and other kinds of efforts to make sure that kids, those barriers that kids face, are eliminated. So the next area I want to talk about is summer learning. And this is an area that I've done quite a bit of work on. And it's something that I think this community in particular has a real strong commitment around. And I think it's incredibly important and powerful to know just what happens when a faucet of support shuts off for kids during the summer months. We know that low-income kids experience more than a 2-month setback in reading performance over the summer months. More than 2 months. And those losses accumulate, and that they actually contribute significantly to the achievement gap. So these three issues of school readiness, school attendance, and summer learning have a huge impact on the achievement gap. And I thought in the spirit of simulation, I thought I might do a little bit of a simulation for all of us here today on these three community solution areas of readiness, attendance, and summer. And in order to do that simulation, I'm going to have to get some volunteers from out among you who are willing to come up to the stage to help me out with a quick demonstration. Now, to do this, you have to be able to do this. Okay? Now, we're not going to ask if you've ever had to do that before or under what circumstances you may have had to do that. But nonetheless, you have to be able to walk heel to toe. So can I get 2 volunteers who would be willing to come up? Okay.
You're taking your jacket off. That's a little...
Yeah. So this is Linda and Beth. Okay, Linda and Beth, come on over here.
All right.
Can everybody hear me okay? Is that on mic? So Linda and Beth are going to stand side by side. Ron, yeah.
You have to be better at the mic
For the video, okay. All right. So Linda and Beth are going to be our typical middle income and lower income students. Beth is going to be our typical middle income student. Linda is going to be our typical lower income student. Now I can give you the research citations on this, but any researchers in the house here? Okay, good. Because I can't control for foot size, and I've had some folks before sort of question some of the statistics, but this is based on the summer learning research and other research based on more than 39 empirical studies going back to 1906 about the impact of these three issues on the achievement gap. So Beth, I'd like for you to take 4 heel-to-toe steps forward. Okay, so this is the gap at the beginning of kindergarten. Why is there a gap at the beginning of kindergarten? All the things we've talked about before, right? Access to opportunities. There's a gap that starts at the beginning of kindergarten. Let's look at the summer after kindergarten. Beth, take a half step forward. Actually, I skipped kindergarten, didn't I? Start again, Beth, I'm sorry. We got to do the kindergarten year, okay? So I want you to imagine Linda and Beth are in the same school district. Linda, again, is a low-income student. Beth is a middle-income student. She's got a head start at the beginning of kindergarten. So let's do the kindergarten year, okay? So both of you take, Beth, you take 4 heel-to-toe steps forward, and Linda take 3.5. So this is the kindergarten year. Beth took how many steps? 4. Linda took 3 and what? 3.5. Why did Linda take fewer? She's going to be one of those kids who are chronically absent, right? So she's not going to learn at the same rate during the school year. Now let's look at the summer. I was trying to rush. Now let's look at the summer. So half step forward for Beth and a full step back for Linda. Why does Linda have a setback? Lack of summer learning opportunities. Why does Beth have a half step forward? She's got books, she's got access to enrichment opportunities. She's continuing to learn, not at the same rate she was learning during the school year, but she's still continuing to learn. So now they're starting first grade. So let's do first grade. So 4 heel-to-toe steps forward. And 3.5. Okay, and now let's do the summer after first grade. So half step forward and a full step back. So this is at the beginning of second grade. What's happened to this gap? Why has it gotten bigger? Because our teachers and our school districts are doing such a terrible job. Is that right? No. No. It's because of inequitable access to enrichment, to opportunities beyond what happens in the classroom. That these factors, readiness, attendance, and summer, are responsible for a huge percentage of the growth in this achievement gap. That's just second grade. If we had a bigger stage, we could illustrate third, fourth, fifth. The fact of the matter is that the gap explodes for kids. By the time they reach 5th grade, some kids, because of these differences, are more than 2 years behind. 2 years behind. So let's give our volunteers a big round of applause. I hope that visual sticks with you, because our job is to stand in that gap. That's what our job is in terms of communities and the work that we're trying to do, is to try to expand opportunities for kids beyond what happens in the school, beyond what happens during the regular school day and year. And what we're seeing across the country is communities really stepping up to address this challenge. Let's go to the next slide. I've talked about summer, and let's go to the next slide. So what I'm most excited about, what really gets me excited about this campaign, is that there are a lot of efforts that talk a good game, and that say a lot of good things, and that mobilize a lot of people, but don't actually produce a whole lot, and don't actually change a lot. And what we've seen over the last several years in particular is that a commitment to this issue and very hard and difficult work of integrating a lot of different programs and opportunities together can actually produce results on the ground. We have places that we can point to, next slide please, that are becoming proof points. And I would suggest to you that here in the Suncoast, by the end of next year, if we do what we say we're going to do, if we take action on our aspirations, on our commitments, this place, Manatee and Sarasota, are going to be a proof point. They're going to be a place that enables people to suspend cynicism and say that we actually can do something on this. We can point to places that actually make a difference. We can show that we can improve school readiness, that we can reduce chronic absenteeism. And I'd love to see an end to summer learning loss. I'd love to see a commitment that says we're not going to have any of our kids experience a setback. That we're going to work across programs, across schools, across opportunities to make sure that those things happen. Next slide, please. We've seen communities that have actually increased school readiness rates based on readiness assessments. Some places do not have a standardized school readiness assessment. What a lot of those places are doing, working with Head Start centers and other places to say, let's look at how many kids have undetected, undiagnosed, untreated conditions later in their educational careers, and then how do we make sure that those things are identified much earlier and actually drive down the number of kids who show up with these things undiagnosed and untreated. I've seen communities that have said just in the power of actually knowing our numbers on chronic absenteeism and the very act of communicating with parents how important kindergarten is, communities that have gone from a culture and schools that have gone from a culture where kindergarten is sort of seen as, well, kind of important, optional attendance maybe, or half day, people that they've made a commitment to full day kindergarten, a commitment to making sure that families and kids understand how critically important it is. They've actually moved those numbers. Next slide. On summer learning, we've seen places that have said, we can do this. We can do pre and post test. I actually was in a couple of programs this morning that have actually shown some really significant results. The thing that I would say on these three issues that I would want to encourage folks on, and I want to have an opportunity maybe for a couple questions, and I'll wrap up with this, is that for me, I travel a lot. I go to communities across the country that are engaged in this campaign. And it's pretty easy to find a high-quality program in most communities. You can see a program that's producing good outcomes for 100 kids, 200 kids, 300 kids. And you can see another program that's producing good outcomes for 100 kids, 200 kids, or 300 kids. What I rarely see are communities that really think about how you knit those things together, how you make sure that kids that get quality programming in 0 to 3 transition to a quality pre-K program, get access to a wonderful summer experience before kindergarten, get access to support from tutors and mentors during the regular school day and year, have access to after school, have access to summer. We don't concentrate those efforts on the same populations enough, and we don't do the handoffs particularly well. And we don't do the handoffs particularly well, not just in public agencies, but in nonprofits and other groups that operate programs and services as well. So the reason you have a coalition, the reason why you can mobilize an entire group of stakeholders like the folks that are in this room, is that it takes everybody working together, making sure that those programmatic opportunities for kids that are producing good outcomes add up to something more. And if you do that, if you can concentrate those efforts and you can work on those linkages and make sure that efforts align and connect, we have a great chance of making a generational change in this community, of fundamentally changing the odds for families and for kids. Because that is really what this campaign is about. That's why I'm so excited to be here. And I want to again say thank you for having me, and I look forward to interacting with you and hearing some great stories about all the work that's going to happen here in Manatee. So thank you very much. I think I have some time for a couple questions. Is that okay? Do I have time? Yes, I have time. Wonderful. Yes, please. Of which gaps specifically?
The relationships among the nonprofits and educational systems, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So one of the efforts I'm pretty excited about in the summer space right now is taking place in the Bay Area in California, where they've got a commitment to reduce summer learning loss for 50,000 kids. And you can't have that kind of goal or ambition if you think you can do that with one program. So what they're trying to do is say, what do kids need over the course of the summer? There's some kids who need very intensive, full-day, 6-week summer interventions, kids who are already behind or who are going to experience a huge setback. There are kids who need intensive, high-quality summer programs. There are other kids who may need a summer reading program. It's enough for them to be engaged with their public library or with other online reading programs or other kinds of technology, so that there's a spectrum of opportunities. And what they've tried to do is kind of link a lot of those programs together and make sure that across the spectrum, the kids who need the really intense opportunities, intensive interventions, get them, and kids who may need a little bit less get those, and maybe need just a little to kind of keep up and keep learning, to think really strategically about that continuum. And we've seen countless communities start to do that in these different solution areas, to say, really the power and strength of getting a lot of providers together is to say, well, how do we get more targeted? How can we be more strategic about the resources that we have available? Because what we've seen is that in many cases, it may not mean more money. I know a lot of people like to go, the first step is to say, well, we need more money. A lot of the effort has been about, we need to spend what we have differently, frankly, and we need to spend more on what works and less on what doesn't. And that's why I think it's so exciting to see the Title I investments being used in a fundamentally different way here, because we've spent Title I money on the same thing for a long, long time, and haven't gotten a huge result, and haven't gotten a huge benefit from that. And what's exciting, I think, is to start to see folks investing those resources very differently and very strategically. That's a great question. Thank you. Yes? Yeah, so what are the roadblocks to that effort to sort of link together and to achieve that kind of collective work? I think some of the roadblocks mean that the skill set sometimes that you need to operate and replicate a quality program may not be the same skill set you need to do work collectively. So sometimes people are so focused on their individual program that it's very difficult to have a space to have the conversation about those linkages. We don't typically fund efforts at that collaboration and coordination. We like to fund direct service stuff, and sometimes folks need the space to be able to say, where are you working? Which kids are you serving? Which families are you reaching? How do we link? How do we connect those things? And so sometimes the pressure just to deliver your own quality program is so great, and folks are understaffed and scraping by just to do that, that sometimes it's harder to take a step back and have an opportunity to look across an entire community. And that's what I've seen is so powerful in the campaign, is when we can create that space for folks to work together and to take really unconventional partnerships. I mean, we've seen public health and educators working together. We've seen the medical community, the faith community, other folks stepping up to the table and having conversations with people that they may never have had a conversation with before. And having that space and that opportunity to work through those issues, I think is absolutely critical. And there's something about this milestone of third grade reading that's pretty special around that. And it's the thing, it's something that draws people together in a way, working in education, I haven't really seen a lot of before. And that's what's so powerful about this, I think, is that it can really be something that communities can come together around. I don't think we would have 230 communities across the country doing this if there wasn't something to that framework that says it's really not about adding a lot of to-dos to folks, to your to-do lists. I think most folks in this room are probably pretty busy, right? You probably have a pretty full to-do list. And so the trick in a lot of this work is to figure out how do we work differently, how do we work together in a way that makes all of our jobs a little bit easier, not just adding more initiatives, more work, more things to do. Yes?
With the community of PSL teachers, do you find that that's a barrier in the elementary and middle schools today, and how would you address that for kindergarten students coming in? Is there a specific ESL class that they would go into first, or are they integrated into the normal classroom?
So across the country, I think folks are really wrestling with this issue and dealing with it in very different ways in terms of the models. What we've seen is that dual language learning is a critical component in many of these campaigns, and being very intentional about making sure that you're addressing both the needs of kids as they come in with language acquisition and making sure that they become literate in actually both languages, both their language that's spoken at home and the language that's spoken in school, and making sure that kids are proficient in both. I think that that's an important commitment, because what we have now in many places is kids who are proficient in neither. So they have a little bit, they may speak one language at home, but may not read, write that language fluently. Or proficiently. And similarly, they're in school and they're not fully proficient in the language spoken at school. So helping kids become proficient in both is where the campaign has said, let's make sure that we're addressing the needs of dual language learners and making sure that they have access to those opportunities. Yes, sir, you had your hand up for a while.
Can you give a couple of suggestions how the faith-based community can come alongside and assist in the campaign?
Yeah, so I've seen a number of things across the country where the faith community can play a pretty powerful role. I think pulpits are pretty important, and so hearing messages about the importance of school, getting folks on the attendance bandwagon and sending a message about attendance is a pretty easy message, and we've seen that message go out from the faith community. Also summer programming, making sure kids are reading during the summer. Many buildings, churches and other faith organizations have facilities and have opportunities to be engaged there, as well as efforts to be involved in volunteerism. So I think there's a variety of different roles that the faith community can play in all of this. Yes?
What do you think about community groups and organizations who would like to send in adult readers to classrooms to introduce an adult who they might ordinarily not, children might ordinarily not meet, and be sent home with their own book? Is that something that you've seen elsewhere in the country?
Yeah, so the power of volunteerism in all of this, I think, is significant. And what I always encourage people to do is, I see sometimes that those efforts tend to be isolated or somewhat random. And what we've seen communities do with the campaign is say, let's unite around the goal of making sure kids get access to tutors and mentors, which sometimes are two different things. Folks who have real training in how to tutor kids in reading and in supporting literacy, and folks, volunteers who can provide mentoring, but focus that effort on a goal, on something tangible, on helping kids reach a milestone, because volunteerism for the sake of volunteerism sometimes is not all that sustainable and doesn't produce the result that we're actually trying to achieve. So what we've seen is when folks say, look, let's mobilize volunteers around the 3rd grade reading goal, around reaching this milestone, and let's think about the variety of ways volunteers can plug in to that effort in schools, in community-based organizations, in other places where volunteers can all be part of the same effort, focused on a singular goal, that tends to bring life to that volunteer effort in a way that few other things have in communities. And it's much easier to get volunteers to say, we need your help for 6 weeks over the summer to do this or that. And it's specific, it's targeted, and it's part of a greater whole or a greater effort. There was a question over here, and I know you had your hand up for a while. Yep, you, thank you. So strategies for parents and working with parents. So one of the first that I've seen that's been really powerful in communities is a shift in how we talk about parents. And a lot of effort, and I can say this because, again, I'm a former teacher and I like to think back on my early years in teaching. And a lot of the work we did with parents was about how do you get parents to come to the school for parent conferences? How do you get them involved and engaged in our agenda? And what we've seen with the campaign is a subtle but important shift to say, you know, a lot of parents need support and they need help. And let's think about how, rather than starting the conversation with how do we get parents engaged in our agenda, start the conversation with how do we get engaged in theirs. How do we support parents? How do we support parents' success? How do we help parents who want to play the role that they need to play, but may not know how? Who want to be their child's first and best teacher? Who want to be a coach and facilitator of learning? Who want to make sure that kids have access to these opportunities they may not know even exist? So starting in that place, I think, can change fundamentally the dynamics that sometimes are at work when we have sort of an us and them kind of idea going about, well, parents don't do this or parents don't do that. I think we've got to start from a place, and I don't know of too many parents right now who couldn't use a little extra help and support. So that's, I think, a pretty powerful way to start that conversation and that dialogue. I see Bronwyn up here, which probably means I'm getting the time to stop. So I'm going to again say thank you. I'm going to encourage you, whatever we can do at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading to be helpful and support this effort. We want to work with you. We have this really nice reciprocal relationship with all of our communities. We want to be there to provide support and help, give you access to relationships, to recognition, to resources that may not be available. But fundamentally, this is something that is owned and driven by local communities, and it's for local communities. And so we want to thank you for everything that you're contributing to this effort. So thank you very much.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited about the turnout for this campaign because it truly is a very important milestone for all that we've done over the last year and a half with the executive committee working on the grade level reading campaign. In listening to Mr. Fairchild, it warms my heart because I believe we are on the right track. Many of the things that he talked about, we just implemented in our own school district for Manatee. This year we had our first Title I summer school in all of our Title I elementary schools called Camp Rise. It was a 5-week program and where students were engaged not only in intensive reading instruction, but It was hands-on activities. They had a field trip every single day. Not every single day, sorry, every single week. And all of our activities were theme-based. So zoology, environmental science. We used a lot of the STEM as concepts as our themes. So our students were highly engaged in not only literacy, but math and science. So it really has confirmed what we are doing is what's best for our students and helping our students close not only the summer slide, but I'll talk about later on this afternoon what we're doing for attendance and how Manatee County Public Schools is stepping up to the plate. Absolutely. Under Dr. Thompson's leadership, our first year of Title I Pre-K was an outstanding success, and so I'm only expecting it to get better each and every year. And part of the program was to also connect with our summer schools. So we had our very first hybrid VPK/kindergarten summer school program. And again, later on this afternoon, the audience will hear how we were able to expose the children in that program to over 1 million vocabulary words through a program called Footsteps to Brilliance. So we're really feeling like we're, again, headed in the right direction. It all aligns to what Mr. Fairchild shared a little bit ago. Well, it's important because you have to walk the talk. If I say it's a major priority and I'm not even in attendance, then it doesn't bode well that obviously it couldn't be that important, that the superintendent couldn't take time out of her day to be present. So it was absolutely paramount that I was here for a major portion of the day and participate in this evening's panel to share with our community that this is not a Manatee County Public School System problem. This is a Manatee County problem. We all have to take ownership of this, and we all need to play whatever small role or large role we may be able to play in ensuring that our students are attending school and that we're providing high quality education for them. Because in the end, it comes back to either hurt our community or enhance our community. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that everyone would walk away with a sense of commitment and pride and a challenge. What can I do to be supportive for a student who may be encountering challenges such as not having access to early learning education, chronic absenteeism, summer programs that could possibly happen over the summer months. Each person can either come and volunteer, make monetary donation to nonprofits that support these efforts, or continue to just be a great parent if you're a parent of one of our students. So I hope that people leave here understanding what we're facing and knowing that there is a solution to our challenges.